There's still a million votes left in Pennsylvania, close to it.
I think she lost.
Running out in Pennsylvania, yep. It's not changing.
I hate to say that because I've been hopeful all night, but I think she lost.
I do too. I think it's 90% over. Nate Silver is at it again. He's taken my prediction system, the keys to the White House that has been right since 1984, and claimed that he can turn the keys better than me to predict a Trump victory. The truth is, Silver has no understanding of the system. His sole purpose is to discredit it so that he can burnish his own very different approach, which is the compilation of polls. In the very hard to call 2012 election, I called Obama's re-election 2 years ahead of time. Then, unprovoked, Nate Silver issued a 30-page attack saying the keys can't possibly call the election this early. You can't because you compile polls, and polls are not useful until very close to the election, and even then aren't accurate. But the keys can because they reflect the structure of how American presidential elections really work. A lot would have to go wrong for Joe Biden to lose this election. Kamala Harris will be a precedent-breaking president of the United States, the first woman president in U.S. history.
Can I just finish a goddamn
stupid? I don't need you to call me stupid. I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me.
Are you ugly? Do you have pink hair and a nose ring? If not, donate to my Patreon today. Join the Chud Army and gain access for exclusive content and other perks. If you're too broke for that, then just like, share, and subscribe. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video.
You predicted Donald Trump would win the popular vote victory, which he didn't actually, but he did, of course, win the
I've got to stop you right there because stop, or I'm going to stop this interview. You are spreading misinformation. And, there has been this concerted campaign against me that started, by a couple of wannabe unknown journalists claiming I didn't predict Donald Trump's victory. That is an outright lie. I clearly, in my September 23rd Washington Post interview, said nothing about the popular vote, said Donald Trump was headed for a win, that in fact, I predict any generic Republican would win this election based on the keys against the White House party, and I predicted at the time that Donald Trump would be impeached. To a new level. He's also brought blatant racism to a new level. Things like, I'm as Greek as Giannis Antetokounmpo, the black Milwaukee Bucks basketball star who was born in Athens of African parents, is a Greek citizen and was the Greek flag bearer at the Paris Olympics. But because he's black, he couldn't possibly be really Greek. I remember, and the keys, because the keys depend upon a rational, pragmatic electorate deciding based on governance whether the incumbent party should get 4 more years. And we've seen the explosion of some trends that have existed before, but not to this extent. Disinformation. Elon Musk is, I don't know how many hundreds of billions he has. He has been the director of misinformation. 2 billion views of his spreading of disinformation, not just about the economy, but about immigrants, about minorities. We've never seen disinformation at this scale. Next, we have never seen to this scale the agitation of 3 trends that have been very deeply embedded in American history: misogyny, racism, and xenophobia. The first anti-immigrant law was 1798, and Donald Trump wants to revive it. It was some 10 million Biden voters who decided not to vote this time, and that's directly tied to misinformation. They don't like Trump, but they're thinking, well, do we really
pick up more votes this time than he did in 2016?
Pardon me?
Did Donald Trump pick up more votes this time than he did in 2016?
Yeah,
or in
but not
2020?
than he picked up in 2020, the most relevant last election. He picked up about the same.
I think what I'm saying is that both sides can say things like this, like misinformation. It's hard to quantify that.
If you don't let me make my points, why do you have me on?
No, we love it. It's a conversation. It's spirited. I think there's a little bit of a delay.
We're done.
I think we'd love.
Let me talk. What's the point? Are you the expert or am I the expert? You can question me.
You so claim to be an expert. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. The critical thing in this election were at least 10 million Biden voters who did not vote. If even half of them had voted, this election would have been different.
We hope to have you back in 4 years. There is a little bit of a delay, Professor Lichtman, so I apologize if we were stepping on each other's toe. Our intent was, of course, to listen to what you had to say. And like you said, you were wrong. But maybe in 4 years, we'll get back on track. Again, Allan Lichtman with us here on the DMV Zone. We appreciate you.
Yes, as I said, things could go wrong. There could be unprecedented events that change the pattern of 160 years of history. That's what happened here. Two things. Number one, disinformation. We've always had disinformation, but disinformation has exploded to an unprecedented degree. You talked about a grievance election, but a lot of that grievance was driven by disinformation. Starts with Fox News and conservative media, conservative podcasters with tens of millions of views. But we've seen something brand new this time. The 300 billionaire Elon Musk putting his thumb on the scales through his control of X, formerly Twitter. It's been reported that his misinformation has had billions, literally billions of views. And this has spread to every aspect of this election. There is misinformation about everything about the economy, inflation, jobs, unemployment, the stock market, growth. There is vast disinformation about undocumented immigrants, that they're supposedly killers who are out.
I think, look, we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. And look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
them
and
before
I
the
was
election.
not wrong. And that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be
Who
taking
won?
cheap
Who
shots
won?
at me.
Who won?
You want to make your
You
point,
live
make your
in
point.
a total
Don't make it
world of
personal.
denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me.
Yeah,
so quiet with your personal attacks.
Yeah, come find out again.
Make whatever point you want.
Yeah.
Don't
Look,
make it personal.
You don't know anything. You don't know anything.
You attacked me personally.
You're so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only been a professor for 51 years.
On this program, I've never been able to finish a thought.
How many books have you published? No, because you're personally attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to stand for personal
brother, you got it wrong.
Say
were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just finish a goddamn thought ever on this show?
No, not if you're personally attacking. I admitted I was wrong. I don't need you to call me stupid.
Okay.
Can I just say, it's great to see you Democrats all getting along so well.
Who taught you manners?
It's lovely to see a post-election harmony as you all come together again.
We're just one right now.
Hey, Allan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second? And let someone who knows what they're doing.
You're so right, Pierre. You're so right. We're so unified right now.
Make any point you want. So I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't
blasphemy against you? Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser? Okay, can I just give the correct answer for once?
All right, now for those of you who may be wondering just exactly who this guy is, Allan Lichtman is an American neckbeard who taught at American University in Washington, D.C. He is famous, renowned for having his 13 keys system of predicting presidential elections. Supposedly, they're never wrong. Now, this wouldn't really be a big deal if Allan Lichtman weren't a complete egomaniac who was just obsessed with his keys. Like, the problem really is, like, the reason this guy is even getting any sort of notoriety at all, or there's any focus on him at all, is because he's having this complete meltdown because his system has been proven wrong. Like, this guy is like the one academic who is pretending to know, to have built a system which can reliably predict the outcome of presidential elections. He's a little bit like Ann Seltzer, if you've heard of her, who was also proven wrong. But the thing about Allan is he's just so never, ever, ever willing to admit when he's wrong. And this is like the last time. Like before, he was kind of skating by and getting away with it, I guess, and building up his reputation. And now he's just been totally blown out of the water. His credibility is now in tatters because of his wildly incorrect 2024 position. And he's just basically doubled down and coped, saying that it was Elon Musk buying Twitter and spreading all this misinformation that swung the election, that voters are no longer rational. Right? This is just the nastiest sort of meltdown you could imagine. But to go back through the history, Lichtman has said he correctly guessed 1984 and 1980, I believe. However, it was never documented that he actually correctly made these predictions. We kind of just have to take his word for it, and even that's dubious. There's no publication, no interview, and 1984 was pretty obvious that Reagan was going to win. Same thing with 1988. George H.W. Bush was in the lead, and Dukakis never had a shot. 1992 is when we can first tell definitively that he actually moved the goalposts. This was on his short-term economy key. He said that the economy is not in recession, and that because in the early 90s the recession ended in 91. Had he gone by his original definition, he would have predicted a Bush re-election. However, afterward, he changed it to public perception of the economy and tried to play it off and said that we didn't have the data to say the recession ended, even though the government published that data in March of 91. So the government had already said the recession has ended in March of 91, but obviously Bush didn't get reelected. So then he changed the economy key from how the economic data of whether or not we're in a recession to whether or not the public perceives the country to be in a recession. And he tried to act like, well, the info wasn't available, so I just went by this metric, even though it totally was available. In 96, it was pretty obvious. Clinton was very popular, and there was not a big enough margin of error in the polls to suggest that Bob Dole really had a shot at winning. Even now, I wasn't alive during this time, but even now, the name Bob Dole just evokes weakness. I'm Bob Dole, and I'm running for president. Some decrepit old man who no one takes seriously. Anyway, in the year 2000, Allan Lichtman really missed. He predicted a Gore victory. And to basically cover his butt, because that didn't come true, he coped twice. The first way he coped is he said, I predicted the popular vote, so technically I'm right. And he said his system predicts the popular vote winner rather than just the outcome of the election generally. So he's shifting the goalposts here. Second, he started pushing election denial months later, saying the GOP was ignoring black voters' ballots and also that the GOP had stolen Florida from Al Gore, which was just complete crap. There were multiple ballots that were filled out for Gore incorrectly, right? The people who filled out these ballots wrote in Gore as like a write-in candidate, and then also filled in the bubble for Gore. But state law says you can't do that, and it's an overvote. So, even if those votes should have counted or not, state law says they can't be counted. So he was still just wrong there. In 2004, he was right. We'll give him that. In 2008, he was also right, but this was obvious from polls. In 2012, Romney was behind in Ohio, which proved to be a pivotal swing state. So again, not very surprising. Obama was an incumbent at that point. In 2016, Allan Lichtman did predict Trump would win, but Trump won without the popular vote. And just if you were paying attention, he said his system predicts who would win the popular vote rather than the outcome generally. So it's like, well, which is it? Right? It can only be one or the other. Because before he was saying, oh, well, actually my system predicts the popular vote. But then he predicted a Trump victory in 2016, which is unique. We'll give him that. But then obviously Trump did not win with the popular vote in 2016. So there's a clear inconsistency there. He's changing his story. In 2020, Allan Lichtman said that Biden would win. The polls also favored Biden back then. Whether or not you think that whole thing is legit is up to you. But, really, he's never been right about an election that polls said other. Even in 2016, he actually doubted himself. He wasn't confident in the answer. And if he doubted himself in 2016, even though he said his system predicted a Trump victory, then why can't we doubt his system now? But I mean, if you doubt his system now, that's blasphemy against me, as he said earlier in the compilation. But 2024 was his big meltdown. 2024 was Allan Lichtman's moment where all of his excuses ran out. He went from initially saying one of his keys was whether or not the economy was in recession to he basically did the inverse of 1992 to saying that it was whether or not the general public perceived the economy to be in recession, back to in 2024 this time around whether or not the economy was actually in recession according to the hard data. I think he just couldn't repress the fact that he's a Democrat shill, because like all Democrats, he had to insist that Biden was doing a good job with the economy, and that bled into his prediction, which is why he predicted a Biden victory. He also said a bunch of other ridiculous things. Like he said, if Biden's economy was good, that Biden was doing a good job, that GDP was increasing. Also claimed that there were major foreign policy successes under the Biden administration. He said funding Ukraine was a success. Ridiculous. Also, one of his keys is that there's no scandals during the presidency. And he said there were none under the Biden presidency, which is ridiculous. Just off the top of my head, I can think about the Democrat Party being exposed for lying about Biden's mental capacity. Everyone in the entire country saw that, and that's why Biden had to drop out of the race, because he was clearly senile and unfit. I can also think of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, among countless other things. But Mr. Lichtman said that there has to be bipartisan recognition for it to be a scandal, which is a ridiculous way of defining it. Anyway, that's the history of his keys. To cope this time around, he has said that Elon Musk's disinformation on X made the electorate less pragmatic, that it had been more pragmatic in the past, and that the key premise of his keys is that it operates under the assumption that you have a pragmatic electorate. And he's just melting down in the worst way possible. Anyway, that's it for this video. The downfall of Allan Lichtman. Watch those salty tears just flow and flow. Watch the seed. Revel in his frustration and pain, his anguish. Please like, share, subscribe if you enjoyed it. Consider subbing to the Patreon. And Red Channels will catch you in the next one.